Cinematographers whose work is more stylized often attract like-minded directors who work with subject matter that is on the more extreme side of the spectrum. Benoit Debie is one of these DOPs. His visuals are easily identifiable, with saturated, punchy colors, a layer of optical texture, and evocative camera movement. He balances using old and new technology to produce bold, in-your-face photography. In this video, I'll break down Debie's style by analyzing his cinematic philosophy and how he achieves this by his choice and use of technical gear. Belgian-born Debie began his career by studying at a Belgian film school. After graduating, he worked as a camera assistant on 2 feature films. He then began to shoot for television for 8 years, before he shot his first feature film with regular director Gaspard Noé, and has worked on features ever since. Other directors that he's worked with include Harmony Korine, Wim Wenders, Ryan Gosling, and Floria Sigismondi. Debie paints with his lighting and bold strokes of color to capture a vivid portrait of life. He describes his approach to creating saturated neon images on spring breakers. I remember Harmony telling me at the beginning that he wanted the image to be one of the stars of the movie. It was really important for him to have something strong and intense visually. A lot of the photography in the film utilized a bold color palette with a vibrant, monochromatic color tint. This is where there's one dominant color over the entire image. Although he likes to achieve this as much as possible in camera, he also considers the role of grading in post-production a great modern tool to facilitate creating the desired quality of the color and lighting in the final film. When I shoot a feature film, I always work on the color grading afterwards. It's really important, and it's a big part of my work. During the shooting, you decide on the colors and the contrast, but you still want to adjust them later. With the latest technology, you can change almost everything. This appreciation of modern post-production technology is counteracted by his love of shooting on the older medium of film. Although he sees merits in both digital and celluloid, he tends to shoot on film whenever it's logistically possible to do so. The complexity and depth of color reproduction on this analog medium best represents how he sees the world. With digital, it's very difficult to see any layers of color. Take green for example. You can record green digitally, but it's hard to register the cyan, yellow, or red inside the screen. But the nuances are all there on film. In Debie's view, shadows and highlights on film stock are also represented with more subtlety, with a look that appeals to his personal, aesthetic sensibilities. His way of seeing the world, at least how he presents it on screen, is often harsh, complex, and textured. Choosing locations and building them with a production designer play an important role in his cinematography. A lot of the look of the films he photographs is built around shooting in textured, charismatic locations with the right practical or naturally occurring light. He describes this while shooting The Beach Bum. For me and Harmony, it's very important to pick the right locations. We scout so many during pre-production. It's about finding the best place for the film in terms of lighting and design, with the set designer who came with us to get the color right. It's not just about the right place, but seeing locations at the right time. Debie's perspective comes across strongly in a lot of his camera movement, which is why he finds it so important to operate the camera himself. It's really important to me, especially when we shoot on film. I can see the exact frame through the eyepiece, the reflection, the darkness, the contrast. It's important for me to see that, and I also like to operate the camera. It's part of the look of the movie. He brings an interesting mix of both a subjective and objective way of viewing the characters on screen. Enter the Void is a good example of how his framing and camera movement affect the perspective of the story. It has moments of intensely subjective movement, where Debie's camera literally becomes the eye of his characters through prolonged POV shots. The film has other sequences shot from a crane overhead, where the perspective of his camera changes and becomes completely objective, as if we're looking at the characters through omniscient eyes. Whatever perspective his camera adopts, it's always a bold one, usually with a slight shake or rougher feeling that the camera is being personally operated by a human, rather than being robotically smooth. Debie uses a mix of old and new technical gear to achieve his style. Recently, he likes to use modern LED lighting captured on the old medium of 35mm film. For his work on the beach bum, he utilized LED Astera Titan tubes, as well as Arri sky panels. He likes the flexibility that using these RGB fixtures provides, as it allows him to dial in specific color temperatures to his lights, so that he can achieve whatever shade of color he desires. Before the widespread availability of LED lighting technology, Debie used traditional light sources such as HMIs, which he would add different color gels to achieve colored lighting effects. This old technique, however, has its limitations. If you have an HMI and put color gels in it, say you go for a green color, maybe you have 2 or 3 different choices, and at one point you go for it because you have to decide beforehand what green you want, but not if you have an LED light. You can go for green, but you can decide what kind of green. Lime, dark green. It's more intuitive. You can decide on the set and make adjustments. Part of the textural quality of his images comes from his choice to shoot on film whenever possible. He shoots on Kodak film stocks, specifically Kodak 250D for most scenes, which he favors for its rich and vibrant color reproduction. For night scenes where he needs a faster ISO, he'll move to shooting 500T, which he'll sometimes push by one stop to 1000 ASA when he needs to shoot in lower light conditions. Another tool he's used to invigorate his images with interesting color, particularly when shooting exteriors in daylight conditions, is to use a vari-color filter. This is a type of polarizer filter which produces a color shift in areas of reflected light. Practically, he's used this to change colors in the ocean, making the colors more saturated and extreme. Another textural tool that he uses is through his choice of lenses. Different lenses have different image characteristics, fall off and flares. In past movies that he shot on 16mm or 35mm, he's used modern, sharper lenses such as Arri Zeiss Master Primes to work against the film, a medium with less intrinsic sharpness than digital. On the other hand, when shooting digital, he's used old, softer, vintage glass to even out the image from becoming overly sharp. Recently, he's carried over using these lenses when working with 35mm too. He even had custom lenses made for this purpose, which he's often used since. These lenses use the front anamorphic elements from Lomo and use the spherical back elements from Zeiss. These anamorphics flare, vignette on the edge of frame, and their intrinsic diffusion, aberrations, and organic depth of field were a perfect match with the textural quality of 35mm film in creating the trippy, dreamy, and bonkers look we wanted. He also likes to use vintage spherical lenses, such as on a music video he shot for the Carters, where he used old Cook Speed Pancros, which have a beautiful, soft, almost anamorphic-like fall-off around the edges of the frame. He likes Arri, and he's used many of their cameras such as the Arri Flex 416 for 16mm work, the 235 and 435 for 35mm, and the Arri Alexa when shooting digitally. Some DOPs are like chameleons who are able to change their style to suit any situation or film required of them. Others are able to collaborate with directors, yet still push for their signature look that is more singular and unique. Benoit Debie falls into the latter category. Some stories are better told through provocative cinematography than through nuanced, subtle photography. He combines using old and modern gear in interesting ways that are best able to capture how he views the story. Debie uses whatever technical tools he has at his disposal to create interesting, bold, colorful images that produce a powerful and sometimes extreme artistic statement. If you enjoy this content and would like to support the creation of these videos, I've started a Patreon page which I'll link in the description. Otherwise, liking, subscribing and commenting would also be greatly appreciated. Until next time, thanks for watching and goodbye.